Hey fellow creatives, today I'll be talking about this painting, which I've decided to call The Conductor, and give you a little bit of insight into my process behind it. I think this is probably the best painting I have ever made, or maybe at least on the level of Vibin' in the Chaos. I did another video on my process behind Vibin' in the Chaos if you want to go look at that one. This video is going to be focused more on the inspiration behind this piece and less on the technicals. So if you want to focus more on some of the technical things I employ when I do a painting like this, go watch that Vibin' in the Chaos video, and I'll link it up above. So, The Conductor. This is like one of the largest paintings I've ever done. So I was kind of intimidated. This is a 30 by 40 inch. It took me in total about 10.5 hours, which I'd say is pretty good for a painting this size. So just a little bit of the story behind it. The model that I used is actually someone that I know personally. I took this source photo. I'm not going to reveal her real name, but let's call her Danielle. So I just saw Danielle walk into church one morning and was just struck. I was like, that girl, she's got it going on today. I was just struck with inspiration all of a sudden. And so I asked her and a couple of other people to come outside for about 10 minutes. I originally had an idea for a series, but you know, your vision evolves over time sometimes. Danielle's pictures actually turned out the best. So instead of doing a 3-part series, I decided to just really hone in on these source photos that were of her and do this large piece. Now the concept was originally going to be about humanity's search for a higher power, a higher purpose. And so that's why I staged her in this pose in this certain way, because she's reaching up but also like isn't quite confident enough to reach up all the way or look up into heaven. But like most of my paintings, this vision evolved as I started painting. So my interpretation now is very different than what it was intended for. So at one point I had the background, this blue part of the background done, and this reddish pinkish orange bleeding into the yellow. The scribbles weren't there yet. The lines coming from her fingers with the birds were not there yet. It was just Danielle and this contrast of blue and like a fiery reddish yellow. So at that point, I had no idea what I was going to do next. And sometimes it's just like that. When I plan paintings, I like to plan them kind of halfway and then see how they evolve over the course of the painting, because allowing for spontaneity really allows me to be the most inspired. This idea just popped into my head. Why don't I just put these strings at the end of her fingers? And then I had an idea that had been kind of fomenting. Really wanted to include birds in this painting for some reason. You know, maybe that's just because I've been watching the show Vikings, and like whenever somebody dies or something important happens, the ravens show up. As you can see, eventually I decided to put these graffiti-esque scribbles in the background. Really the question that everyone wants to know is, what does it all mean? And to be honest, sometimes it takes a few days of staring at something I've created, asking myself the question, what am I trying to communicate? To myself even. Something my husband said to me the other day was, stories are weaved into the human genome. And so kind of like when an artist paints, when I paint, what is inside of me comes out even if I don't initially know what that means. And there are definitely multiple interpretations to this painting that could work. I'm just going to share with you mine. But for me, I've noticed a lot of my paintings have a lot to do with relaxing in the midst of chaos or finding some kind of peace no matter what is happening around you. And I think this is on a very similar vein. Over here in this blue, we have a kind of peaceful sky. Like it could still connect into that idea of heaven. And even though it's dark, the lines are definitely more structured compared to on this side in this fiery red and yellow. We have all of these chaotic graffiti marks. Everything just looks a lot less ordered and put together. So I feel like there is this war between peace and calm and all of this chaos. And both of these worlds are a part of the subject. But instead of succumbing to one or the other, she's using her inner light and inner power to kind of weave the two together. She's dancing in between them and kind of finding her own peace in between those two parts of herself, and no matter what's happening around her. So that's kind of why I called it the Conductor. Because on one hand, she has decided to conduct this symphony of her own heart. What kind of peace she's going to have, she's made that decision within herself. At the same time, like, it looks like that power is coming through her fingertips, kind of forming power lines that these birds are resting on. So she is a conductor for the energy inside of her. And sometimes we can't really affect what goes on around us, whether it's peace and calm or chaotic. Especially if you suffer from mental health issues, this can be a real issue because there are things you really can't control. You can just manage. Whether you want to say the background is something external or internal. The Conductor is about learning to be free from that influence, being free from the war between chaos and calm that's constantly happening. But that's just what it means to me, so you could take this completely differently. My paintings are less about what I intend for them to be and how I interpret them, and more about how you, the viewer or the collector, interprets them. For me, the purpose of my art is about how it helps you. So if you have a different interpretation, whether it's a slightly different or totally different interpretation, I want to hear it in the comments. And I'm getting ready to post the Conductor on my website, so it'll be available for purchase. And I'm sure shortly after that, the prints will come out. If you want to be part of the first group to hear about that launch and have first pick on this painting, then I would sign up for my email list, because my email subscribers get all the good stuff. The Conductor is an oil painting on stretched canvas. All of this is oil paint, except at the very end, these graffiti lines are actually done with oil pastels. These strings or lines or power lines coming from her fingertips are painted using these solid paint markers. And finally, the birds are painted with these acrylic pump markers. Let me know what you think of this painting in the comments down below, and I'll see you in my next video.